ஏதன் கண்ணே நிலையாகி இருந்திடும் உலகமெல்லாம் எதனதெல்லாம் எதனின்று அனைத்துலகும் எழுமோ மற்றிவையாகும் எதன் பொருட்டா எதனாலும் வையமெல்லாம் எழுந்திடும் எல்லாமும் எதுவே ஆகும் அது தானே உளபொருளாம் சத்தியமாம் அச்சொருபம் அகத்தில் வைப்பான். தானன்றி யாருண்டு தன்னையாரென் சொல்லினன் தான் தன்னை வாழ்த்துகினும் தாழ்த்துகினும் தான் என்ன தான் பிறரென்றூராமல் தன் நிலையில் பேராமல் தான் என்று நின்றிடவே தானன்றி யாருண்டு தன்னையாரென் சொல்லினன் தான் தன்னை வாழ்த்துகினும் தாழ்த்துகினும் தான் என்ன தான் பிறரென்றோராமல் தன் நிலையில் பேராமல் தான் என்று நின்றிடவே With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have come to verse number 38. The last verse in this segment, where the Nool Arivu, that is book learning and fame, are pointed out as major pitfalls in the path to abiding in the self. This is the last verse in that segment. தானன்றி யாருண்டு தன்னையார் என் சொல்லினன் தான் தன்னை வாழ்த்துகினும் தாழ்த்துகினும் தான் என்ன தான் பிறரென்றோராமல் தன் நிலையில் பேராமல் தான் என்று நின்றிடவே தான். This has been written by Bhagavan or one of the devotees, T.P. Ramachandra, one of the devotees covered in Sri Ramanapuri Purana, one of the devotees who comes very early in the 1920s to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan himself points out that he is earning what his grandfather has sown. In 1896, when Bhagavan is in Arunachala temple, it appears T.P. Ramachandra's grandfather would not leave Bhagavan's presence, and he is one of the few who have taken Bhagavan for food, I suppose. I haven't covered that portion properly. But T.P. Ramachandra keeps repeating that what the grandfather has sown, now the grandson is eating. So, that is the continuity of tapas in Bhagavan. That the blessings of Bhagavan, when one totally undeservingly is blessed with, it is not oneself, it is not for oneself alone. What to say? Through the Blessed One, so many are blessed. That's why T.P. Ramachandra keeps repeating what the grandfather has sown, the grandson is eating. Whose blessing it is that we are thinking of Bhagwan? We can't thank them enough. We can't thank Bhagwan enough. To this verse now, it is in continuation of the previous verse. The previous verse paints an overall picture as to how fame can be a pitfall, can be a major pitfall to the learned one. And that verse comes out of the heartfelt experience of a great one, a Brahmajnani, who has written so many inspiring kirtanas and also about Atmavilasa, Sadashiva Brahmendra, and Bhagavan translated that verse for us, that if the motive is fame, then with that one membrane, one is bound to go out, leave all the tapas which made one inward turn, and through this one thin film, imagine that there is something great in the outside, in the numbers, in the words, and waste all that penance in this area of fame, the false pleasure of fame, which doesn't even last one cycle of waking, dream, and deep sleep. Because if we question in deep sleep, is there any thought or support from fame? The answer will be there is no support, there is no thought of fame. Such an ephemeral feeling one makes as the fulcrum of one's life. And the danger was highlighted by saying, even if all the scriptures are in one's hand, and even if one has renounced all the words, fame can be a pitfall, was the reminder. This verse brings it down to the moment. Though the solution given in this verse by Bhagavan is applicable to the previous verse also. Here, how the fame or the opposite of it can bring one out in the moment. When somebody praises you, or somebody talks disparagingly of you, or even for a moment someone pays special attention, or someone turns away without giving attention, the hollow feeling or the false feeling of elation in that moment is what is addressed here. The key point here is that Tanandri Yarundu. Tanandri Yarundu. For a brief moment, let us go back to Upadesha Undiyar. And there I am going to read verse number 8 for us. Aniyabhavathil avanahamaagum ananiyabhavame undipara anithilum uttamam undipara. So aniyabhavathil avanahamaagum ananiyabhavame undipara anithilum uttamam undipara, from the earlier verse on meditation. Vittukkarudalin ஆறுனை வீழ்ச்சி போல் விட்டிடாதுன்னலே உந்திப்பற விசேடமா முன்னவே உந்திப்பற. In Dhyanam, better than the broken is the unbroken Dhyanam, like the flow of ghee or flow of a mountain river flowing down. From that Dhyanam, Bhagavan would have come to Ananya Bhakti, or the Ananya Bhavam, Aniya Bhavatil, instead of treating God as apart from the self, apart from the ego, apart from me, Aniya Bhavatil, Avanahamagam, Ananiya Bhavame. This Avanahamagam is generally interpreted by the great teachers as that Arunachala himself, God himself, is the I present in us, which is the accepted and right interpretation, which is itself helpful. But I had a foolish method that when sitting for Parayanam, I wouldn't refer to any of the meaning-giving books or their talks. I would just listen to the Parayanam and go off, and whatever meaning comes to me, I will hold that and I will go to self-inquiry. And in this particular verse, I had a particular way of looking at this, which was very helpful for me, and therefore I share that. Aniya bhavatil avanaham ananiya bhavame is that Arunachala's aham cannot have anya bhava. Arunachala, the Ishvara, cannot have something apart from him. Avanaham agum. Avanaham agum means, and this is not supportless, in Acknowledgments, again and again, Arunachala's aham would be referred to as Meyaham. Meyaham means true self, where only the I is there, the not I is not there. Therefore, bringing that and that for support, and this, we can get a feel of where Bhagavan is taking us. That in the Ishvara's self, can there be a non-self? Can there be something other than him? Can he say, that fellow is my enemy? Oh, that fellow did this on that day, therefore I will hold against him. It is not possible, because his self is the true self. Avanahamahu ananiya bhavame. That Arunachala's self, in which anya bhava is not there at all. Undipara anaitilum uttamam undipara. Therefore, when Bhagavan is asking us to hold the I, where is he taking us? He is taking us to the Tan, the Ishvara's self, the Ramaneshwara's self. When he is asking the speaker to hold, who is the speaker? There he is waiting. The Ramana's self is waiting. Instead of focusing on to whom is the speech given, if the speaker pays attention to who is the speaker, there itself the Ananya Atma, the Ananya Tan of Ishvara is waiting. Tanandri Yarundu. Other than that real self, can anybody be there? Can anybody exist apart from all the other imaginary creations? Can they exist apart from that reality, apart from that adhara, apart from that substrate? No. Tanandri yarundu. Other than that Atma of Ishvara. Coming back to T.P. Ramachandra Iyer again. T.P. Ramachandra Iyer was a student of philosophy, and he was a lawyer too, and he helps the ashram in a litigation in the late 30s, writes Ganesh Nana. And T.P. Ramachandra Iyer himself says to Ganesh Nana, I was also a philosophy student like you, and I was taken away by the concepts I knew. So one of the days I entered the ashram and there was a discussion going on, and my own knowledge came to the surface, and I too participated in it by mentioning subconscious, superconscious and all that. And there Bhagavan intervened, and in a very strong way he told me, he accosted me and told me, can there be a sub or super without reference to consciousness? So consciousness alone is there, Atma alone is there. All this super, sub and all are superimpositions on that. Don't get carried away by the words as super, sub and all that. There is only consciousness. Don't divide it, hold it. And T.P. Ramachandra Iyer says that when Bhagavan said this, something happened inside me. The consciousness, which was very easily dividing itself, suddenly became one. And that is the great help of listening to the realized master. The realized master's word is not merely a word. It is also a power which taps you back into the self, which puts you back into the self, says T.P. Ramachandra here. To what self? To that one self. Tanandri yarundu, where the Tan raises the ego, from the Tan, the ego rises separately and tries to claim some philosophical ideas as super consciousness, subconsciousness, and all that. The Guru taps it back to the Tanandri yarundu. Can there be anything apart from the consciousness, the Atman? All these other concepts, though they may sound high-flying, they are all not there. They are all mere superimpositions. Only consciousness is there. Tanandri yarundu. Other than that, Arunachala, other than that Ramana's Atma, the Mayaham, can anything exist? Tanandri yarundu. Tannaya insulin in. What does it matter if anyone tells anything to you? What does it matter if anyone tells anything to you? Tanandri yarundu. Other than that Mayapam, can there be anybody? Can there be anything? Whatever others may tell to you, how does it matter? Tan tannai vaaduthuginum, taaduthuginum, tanenna. How does it matter if one praises oneself or one disparages oneself? One should not go into psychology and say that these two have impacts, that personal praise and the personal disparagement or regret have impacts. What is mentioned is how the externalized one falsely gets carried away by praise or unnecessarily gets hurt by the disparaging or inattention of the others. And how does Bhagavan overcome this? He overcomes this by saying, Tanandri yarundu. Other than the Atma, can anybody be there? Your source is there in them also. So forget about the superfluous identity as so and so being talked to by other person. Go to the source. Be there. Then there is no difference between the speaker and the listener. They are only one. Tan tannai vaaduthuginum, taaduthuginum tanenna. How does it matter if one praises oneself or one disparages oneself? So what is to be done? Tan pirarendru oramal. Never move away from Ramana's self. Never move away from Arunachala's self, which is the May Aham, the true self. There is no other person from whom you have to listen something, from whom you expect this. As usual, before coming up to the second floor, I was discussing this verse with my mother. So I was telling her, see how Bhagavan has beautifully written this, that many a time, if by mistake also, if I move away before she has finished the sentence, she may get hurt. Or it may happen to me that if I feel she is not listening, I may have the hurt. So I was telling her, see how Bhagavan is telling that inside you also the same Atma is there. If you ask who is listening, if I ask who is speaking, unfortunately or fortunately, there also I was only speaking. So I had to ask who is speaking and ask my mother to inquire who is listening. There at the source of this and that false ego, the Mayaham is there. When we remain in that, then the inattention of the son or the inattention of the attendant does not hurt you because they are you. The other person is you. Tan pirarendru oramal. Don't see that there are two here. When you ask, who is seeing the son? Who is seeing the attendant? There Shiva himself is there. Tan pirarendru oramal. Tin tannilayil pera, without moving from the real self. Tannilayil pera. Tanendru nindridave dhanam. Remain as that unshakable self. That alone is enough to completely remove this movement away from the self through this important area of feeling inattended or feeling let down by others' words or attention or lack of it, or feeling falsely happy that they are attending to me over others. So many have come, but he is attending to me. That could be a false elation. False elation, why? Because the reality is now left. The reality, the Ananya, is left. From there we have moved away as though I have separated myself, and imagine that my transaction with another separated one is of significance. Whereas all one has to do to go and come to the reality and be free of this false game of praise and disparagement is to ask, who is the listener? Who is the speaker? There, Tannilayil Peramal, Tanendu Nindridave Tam. Remain as that self. That is more than enough, says Bhagavan. To pull it all together, as Sadhuvam Swami does, he puts the second part first. He says that if you listen to Bhagavan and Tanpiraran Roramal, Tannilayil Peramal, Tanendru Nindridave, if you listen to Bhagavan and don't differentiate between the speaker and the listener, don't differentiate between the attender and the attended, don't differentiate between the other and you, and go to the self, go to the source of that ego where Arunachala is waiting, where Arunachala's aham is waiting, the Mayaham is waiting, the Poyaham is gone. What is the source of the Poyaham? All the Poyahams put together, one source is there, that is the Mayaham. Where, what is the indication of Poyaham and Mayaham? In Poyaham, I and the other and the third person is there. Whereas in the Mayaham, the first person, the second person, the third person, all are rolled into the I. The I alone is there. The consciousness alone is there. Sadhu Swami writes these two sentences as the first part. Tanpiraren Roramal, Tannilayil Peramal, Tanendru Nindridave. When one remains as the self, the true self inside, then Tanendri Arunde. Other than that self, who exists apart from that? Tannayar Ensulinen. What does it matter if someone tells anything to you? Tannayar Ensulinen. Tan Tannai Vartiginum, when the self is praising the self or the self is disparaging the self, what does it matter? It does not matter at all. Says Bhagavan to T.P. Ramachandra, the lawyer, the devotee, the attendant, who has reveled in the presence of Bhagavan, and through him, just like from his grandfather to him the blessing was given, through him all of us are being blessed. That all you have to do is to ask, who is the speaker, who is the breather, who is the seer, who is the toucher, who is the taster, who is the hearer, who is the smeller, and always hold, are there these kind of five selves? No, there is only Arunachala, where there is no Anya Bhava at all. Avanahamadu Ananya Bhavame Mundipara. The self, be the self of Arunachala. What is the purpose of coming to Bhagavan? The Tindai Swamigal, whose Purvashrama name I don't remember, he was a professor, a postgraduate in science, and who gets dejected that he is not promoted and sent abroad. And out of that dejection, he comes to Bhagwan. Why these things happen to good people? As Bhagwan quotes from the saint in Tiruvannamalai, that why does the washerman beat the clothes against the stone? It is not to tear the clothes, but only to remove the last small piece, the portions of dust that may be adhering to the cloth. Similarly, good people are also given trouble by Shiva. Only to, this is by Guhai Namah Shivaya, only to remove the last dredges of small amounts of dust in them. So such a good person is given that the apparent trouble, the disparagement from society, the disparagement from the workplace, that though I am a deserving person, I am not sent abroad. Now that disparagement makes him inverted and come to Bhagwan, and he, within the few days of stay in the ashram, he has also brought his mother. And one of the days after visiting, having darshan of Bhagwan and doing penance before him, he comes back to the room where Amma is there, his mother is there, and his mother, seeing the trouble of the son, she asks, "Did you have darshan of Bhagwan?" He says, the Thinnai Swami, later to be Thinnai Swami, "Amma, we have not come here to merely see Bhagwan. We have come here to be as Bhagwan is." And to such a one, Bhagwan gives the instruction when the order comes for him from a Japanese university or so, some other foreign university calls him, and he brings that letter to Bhagwan. Bhagwan, potuma, irukatuma. And Bhagwan says, "Iru." Be that self. And that's what Muruganar says. Even Murugar used Summa Iru Sollara to Arunagirinathar. Whereas our Bhagwan has used just one word, Iru. Of course, to many he didn't even use that. His maunam was more than enough. But we are so blessed when Thinnai Swamigal says to his mother that we have not come here just merely to see Bhagwan as an Anya, as something other than us. No. We have come here to learn that art of being that Mayaham. That Mayaham where there is no difference between oneself and another. And there is no difference between I and another. As it is in Bhagwan. As the perfection of the self is there in Bhagwan, that is where one has to go and abide. And when one abides as that, what does it matter when another praises you or another disparages you? Of course, we come to that point where one understands in the self, in that Atman, where is praise, where are words, where is listening, and all that. Then why does Bhagavan coin this shloka? When the Atman, it is not only removing the first person, second person, third person, it removes all other. There is no other at all. There is only the Atma. So where is the question of hearing? Then why is it coined? Why is this verse coined? It is coined to highlight to us how much the praise and fame and disparagement are fine and appealing to the intellect, which has lost its hold on faith and is now califying, is now floating in that arena of subtlety, that even though it understands that the personalities are not there, that I am not apart from another, even then it gets carried away, it gets pulled out by the subtle pull of the praise and the blame. One incident before we go into the Tapobrashta stage, one incident where T.K. Sundaresh Iyer is directly cautioned by Bhagavan that when Bhagavan is disparagingly talked about in the city, and T.K. Sundareshwar listens to it and comes back, and he feels very bad about himself that he did not retort there, and he's telling Bhagavan, Bhagavan, please tell what punishment I should take, because I did not defend you there, and I just heard all the disparaging remarks and came back. And Bhagavan tells him, patience, more patience, abide in the self. There is no need to return or react. The same thing he tells in a more coarse incident, where in the Virupaksha cave, the robbers come and they are disappointed in seeing a few trinkets of silver to cover the idols of Ganesha, and that alone is there. Other than that, nothing is there. They must have imagined that in this place, lot of wealth must have been accrued. In that disappointment, they give lot of blows to the inmates and Bhagavan too. And when one of the devotees, seeing the backs of the robbers, he asks Bhagavan, Bhagavan, did they hit you? Bhagavan says, Ingeyum puja vizhundhudu. Whereas they did puja to me also, and there was a wheel on his thigh. And seeing that, the devotee picks up an iron bar to go behind the robbers, and Bhagavan stops him. And the words Bhagavan uses are the key to us. How such an incident or an incident of praise or blame, how it can be seen. The same Ekatma, he points out to that person, no, don't do this. That is not our dharma. They have done their dharma. We have to keep our dharma of patience. And the example he uses is that when the teeth bite the tongue, many of us have experienced this. When in the early morning or in the afternoon, when the self is not well oriented into the body, when we bite something in that spirit not having covered all the flesh area, the teeth might make this mistake of biting into the lips or the tongue. Because what is habitual when the self is well flowing, they naturally do so many things which we take it for granted, that the teeth never bite the tongue or the lips. Because the self, the idea of I is so clearly there in all the parts. So this is the limit up to which I go. This is the limit into which I don't interfere. But when there is a small disturbance in that, you may find that the lip might have come in the way of the teeth or the tongue. Tongue might have come in the way of, and the teeth may bite it. And Bhagavan says, if the teeth bite the tongue, do we break the teeth? No. Similar is the case with robbers or other trouble givers. Well, that means they are all one. We are all one. There is only one. And we don't hurt another just because out of ignorance, some disparagement, some wrong words have been put in our direction. Having seen that, we come to the tapo-bhrashta. The two examples we saw how Bhagavan deals with the situation of the disparaging remarks, and coming to the tapo-bhrashta stage. Why Bhagavan coins this verse at all is that we find that many a time in the journey, because we have become intellectuals, the great are the ones who have been devotees and who have held Bhagavan's feet and walked through the whole area of intellect. They cross the intellect by holding faith in Bhagavan. We intellectuals many times, because of the doubt that is part and parcel of intellect, we leave the strength of faith. The strength of faith is left, and the subtlety of the intellect, for a moment, we seem to be all right with everything that's happening. The very next moment, we are filled with doubt. And that doubt envelops our whole life. The whole society is against us. The doubt is of such nature that it can envelop everything. That is where Bhagavan comes and helps us. That to prevent the vagaries of the intellect. Bhagavan gives this whole segment of verses on the Nool Arivu and the fame is for the intellect, because the intellect has now left the shores of faith. In faith, we had a strong hold. Whatever is happening, Bhagavan will take care. And the entire intellect is crossed. But when we leave that aside and use the tools of the doubt and doubt clearance, there what happens? We get into these areas of this fame and getting hurt by disparagement and having self-doubt. This whole area is crossed when we come to the Ekatma, into that oneself. And in my own journey, there was this space. It is not something that's imaginary. Why Bhagavan has brought this segment is that I had practiced the method of letting go of thoughts by just witnessing them without judging the thoughts. What had happened was, certain of the subtle areas had been left unattended, but many of the thoughts must have been really removed, that I could actually experience the thought-free state. Now, the thought-free state was experienced, and I knew I was very close to whatever goal that was. I knew that was very close by, but I somehow had this good fortune of honesty that my journey was not yet over, that there were still some doubts here. The areas in which I was caught up was some of the areas which were deliberately renounced, that I had given up certain things as asked by the Guru there, that I had given them up, that remained as an ego with me. And the ego was remaining intact. It claimed its renunciation and it claimed the thought-free state. And that is where Bhagavan's grace came in, who am I came in. And the moment who am I comes, whatever may be the subtlety of the object held, however subtle the pleasure may be, it is clearly seen. Because the thought about that will appear. How my problem was that since I was a great renouncer of these things, I would look down upon people who are following those things. But in Atmachara, what happened? Those very thoughts would come and would be observed, and they were dropped. And in that Ekatma, the freedom from the danger there was that I could have become I don't know how I moved on to Bhagavan, it is totally Bhagavan's grace, but I was in a particular point where I could have become a great speaker in that particular path and might have spent countless years in gaining that pleasure of appreciation from them, because that Guru's entire life and almost all the books and the cassettes, there was both verbal knowledge as well as the experience of many things. And I was on that verge, but somehow by Bhagavan's grace, there was no desire to go into that, to gain any fame or that. And my problem was kept alive by Bhagavan. Therefore, the solving of my problem became primary, and I focused on it. And by Bhagavan's total grace, he came in and he saved me from, we don't know, once we go into a particular area of fame, how long we will be kept in that, we cannot tell. That is what we are going to see in the next verse. In the next verse, we are going to see how important it is in our journey to respect the grace of Bhagavan, the grace of Guru in saving us, and how important it is, because that will help to let go of the ego. Once you understand, you are not the one who has reached a particular spot by your own ability, but that Guru as the whole of life has cooperated, has helped, has graced you, and you have done practically nothing. What you have done as sadhana is practically nothing. That is where you are saved. That is where your sadhana becomes effortless. Even if you feel you have done a little bit to come to the thought-free state, you will have to do something to hold on to the thought-free state. Even if you feel that at this particular point, because of my cleverness, I stood by, I continued, I did this, therefore I am thought-free now, then that thought-free state has to be held with effort. The ego has to survive, has to make effort. Now, how much it can make effort? It goes out to sleep. It cannot do effort. Therefore, such a thing will not be the true self or the true realization. The understanding that you are totally undeservingly helped by that Guru. The Guru, Guru's grace has come in and saved you. The moment you realize that, then no effort is required to hold the self and be the self. Everything is the Guru. Everything is Ananyam. Everything is Tanandri Arunda. Other than the self, there is nothing. Forget about other praising you or other disparaging. There is nothing like praise. There is nothing like disparagement. There are no words. There is no communication. In communion, there is no communication. We don't need to speak. When this speaking is a unnecessary or a lesser way of sharing the experience. When we are in communion, as we are going to be in the silence, there is no need for communication. Therefore, where is the question of disparagement or praise that are depending on it? There is only oneness of the self. Tanandri yarundu, taan thanne yen sollinen, taan thanne vaadthiginum taadthiginum, taan enna, taan pirar endru oramal, thannilayil peramal, taan endru nindridave taan. Remain as the self, and no communication is required. You are in communion with everything. You are everything. As Bhagavan is everything, as Bhagavan has consumed everything and remains alone, as his devotee, as his disciple, there is nothing else to do except to abide in Bhagavan and be as that one self. Where there is no fame to have as motive of life, where there is movement, there is no movement to guard against. No, where is the movement to guard against in that one self? There is no time, there is no place, there is no communication, there is no other, there is only constant communion. That bliss, the eternal bliss, the unconditional love, that undivided consciousness, the self, where as we see in front of our very eyes, all karmas come and end here. When there is only the self, krityamastikim, swastitim yata. What else is there to be done? Be in communion. As Bhagavan says to Seshadri Swamigal, where is the difference between the worshipper and the worshipped? The whole of Bhakti Yoga comes and merges into the self. Taan pirar endru oramal, thannilayil peramal, taan endru nindridave taan. Where is the Yoga Marga? Where there is no outside, everything is inside, and the Jivatma has to merge into union with Paramatma. Where is the difference? As Bhagavan says to Ramchandra here, the sub and super come only when you differentiate. But there is only the Atman. The whole of Yoga Marga, of union of the relative with the absolute, is completely absorbed in the Tannilai. The Jnana Marga of removal of all ignorance and coming to the fullness of the Jnanam. That whole process is now absorbed in the self. So all the Margas, Karma, Bhakti, Yoga and Jnana merge into the self, as Bhagavan says, from where the I arises, Hristale Manaha Swastata, Kriya, Bhakti, Yoga, Bodha, Dascha, Nischitam. to be identified with the self of Bhagavan, the self of Ramana, the self of Arunachala, the I. That is where all the margas come and merge into that ocean of silence, into that completeness of communion, into that oneness of the self. All the margas merge. And that is where the yoga brashtata is completely solved. For all yoga brashtas, there need not be any worry when they come to Bhagavan. When they come to Bhagavan and Bhagavan's teachings is the mainstream. Bhagavan's teachings is also the help by which all the maverick paths too can find the source and come to the mainstream and not remain apart. They can all come to the self, come to that place where all the streams merge. And the self alone is. This is the abundant grace of Bhagavan. Only one who has suffered from tapo brashtata, yoga brashtata, and who sees the greatness of all the devotees of Bhagavan, who have not placed one step wrong, and without any brashtata they have all come. Murugana, Sadhu Swamigal, T.P. Ramachandra, Mudalayar Party, Ramanacentre Brahmachari, all of them, no brashtata, they have all walked so beautifully. But to the ones who have slipped away, who have gone away with the intellect, when they come back to Bhagavan, oh, what a danger Bhagavan has saved me from. That thankfulness, that gratitude is there. And these verses where Bhagavan particularly cautions the intellect not to go away into the area of false pleasure. The false pleasure of taking credit for book learning. The false pleasure of gaining name and fame. The false pleasure of the appreciation in the moment. These pleasures by which the I comes out and is trapped in the world are completely prevented by Bhagavan by asking us to be the oneself. It is simply beyond words how Bhagavan comes and saves us, and it is simply beyond words how lucky we are. It is incredible that somehow in this whole scheme of things, which is so filled with so many holes, that Bhagavan's grace has come into our lives. We definitely cannot ask for more. With Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in Atma-ucharam for 10 minutes, where there is no fear of anything. There is no fear of slipping. It clears up the whole of Bhakti Marga. The greatness of Karma Marga is also revealed, and one is able to abide in the source of all these margas. Let us sit in Atma-ucharam for 10 minutes. Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana Akka. Your health is all right, Akka?
Namo Ramana, sir. Yes, sir, I'm quite all right. Satsang makes one better also. It's a good tonic. So you would always tell that self-inquiry is the best tonic for everything. If one allows one to do, to the extent one is allowed, it's a great tonic.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana shining as a self in all beings, about which graciously we could talk today. Nandakumarji was meditating very beautifully on the different aspects of today's verse. And it struck me, I just remembered a little incident which I had read about, a few things which I read about. Because in this verse from Bhagavan's life, Nandakumarji has absolutely covered all the aspects. But it's a very important aspect of our lives, this living for others, living for the praise of others, living to avoid the blame of others. It's a very, very common characteristic, not only in seekers of truth, it is there. It is very prevalent. I think in India, it is one of the very major driving forces. And even more so among the women folk, if I have noticed. What will somebody say? Don't behave like this. What will people say? So it's a very, very prevalent aspect. But what is the beautiful part of this, as Nandakumarji highlighted for us, is that Bhagavan has not just left us with saying, be equi-minded in praise and blame. This is an upadesha we get. In the Bhagavad Gita also we get, in the scriptures we get the upadesha of the state to be attained. But what is the method to attain that state? It is probably there. I am not very well versed in the scriptures, but Bhagavan comes to it in almost every statement of his, in every verse of his. There will be a sadhana perspective. There will be a solution perspective. That is that the practical aspect of it is there in every verse of Bhagavan's. And so also over here, Bhagavan is telling us, how do you overcome this need to be praised, this need not to be blamed? By getting into the self, by recognizing that there is no other. Or if we look at it from the bhakti perspective, then Bhagavan's verse, Kurayum Gunamum Ni Allal, Yenne Nivatre. There also the Advaita, the oneness, there is nothing other than you, O Arunachala. If there is nothing other than you, there is no one other than you, where is the need to think? Somebody is blaming me, somebody is praising me. The need doesn't, there won't be any somebody at all. And if you are everything, again in Padiham, Bhagavan says that if you are everything, veli veli teenir manpala uiral, if you are all the five elements, all the living beings, how can I be apart from you? So there is nothing apart from you. So there is no one to expect praise from. There is no one to be worried that somebody will take me amiss. Actually, that I was saying that something I read long back, how much our lives are oriented towards the other, that sometimes even our sorrow, with or without our realizing it, is in order to get the attention of someone else. Though we may feel that we are sad, but if there was no one to listen to our woes, how would we behave? This was brought out in a small little incident that there was a mother just asked her little son, he was some 4 or 5 years old, and she said, "Oh, you fell down, isn't it? A few moments back you had fallen down." How come you are not crying? Maybe 3 years old, maybe 4 years old. How come you never cried? You fell down and you never cried. And the child said, Mom, I never realized you were around. I never realized you were around. So the point is that the child wants to cry to get some sympathy from the mother, to get some response from the other. So as simple as all that. And it is so subtle. I remember one incident which Nandakumarji is very fond of, and he often quotes, that is of Ganesharana's mother, Nagalakshmi Amma, who just saw somebody wearing a beautiful sari, some devotee who had come to the ashram, and she told them it looks very beautiful. And they immediately went and sent similar saris to her. And when Bhagavan came to know, he just sternly told her, Nagu, remember, there is nothing that you do not already have. So she said, I did not even seek to possess it, but he only repeated, remember, there is nothing that you do not already have. Which is obviously that praise also. If I already have everything that I need, there will be no need for praise. There will be no need not to be blamed. There will be no need to prove myself in any way. But this could make one irresponsible if one uses it as just a psychological experience that I don't care who blames me or who praises me. What does it make me? It makes me self-centered. But what Bhagavan is saying is, you recognize there is no one apart from you. You get into communion with the self. Then where is the question of being irresponsible? It is not an indifference to praise and blame. It is not an indifference to the rules of society or the societal requirements. It is a transcendence and going to the ultimate point of oneness, of love. And I also remember reading somewhere, don't remember the source, that one of the important parts of sadhana is not to praise or blame anyone. Do not praise or blame anybody. Because if your need to praise and blame is also in a way the need to get praised or to avoid blame. When you praise and blame, you are putting a difference between you and them. In some way, even when you praise and even when you blame, you are creating a difference. And similarly, when you expect praise or blame, or you do not want blame and you want praise also, you are creating this barrier between yourself and them. So it is to that point that we want to praise people. Sometimes we may not actually, I was just thinking, Bhagavan, I don't think he has praised anybody. Of course, except it is said that when the person passed away. But in their daily activities, I don't see it being reported anywhere that either Bhagavan praised or he blamed, because there was no other to praise or blame. It is so clear. But for us, it is so subtle that we may not even praise or blame someone. We want to please, we want to make somebody happy. Not to please them in order that they may praise us, but just to make them happy. We just want people to be happy. That's a kind of a praise that we are getting back. It is so subtle. When I do something for someone and the person becomes happy, that is a praise for me. That is a praise. So it is so very subtle and it is so pervasive almost in all our actions and our behavior that it's a very important aspect which Bhagavan has dwelt upon over here. Don't think of anyone, don't experience anyone as other. That you can do when you get back to the self, when you abide in the self, then the other ceases to be. There are no others, says Bhagavan. And that is what he is saying in this verse. Nowadays, this statement of Bhagavan has become very popular. There are no others. And I was asked by one of the devotees, what is the meaning of this statement of Bhagavan, there are no others? What does it mean? Will it not make a person irresponsible? If you use anything, as Nanda Kumarji said, if you use anything with the intellect, it can make you irresponsible. But if you understand what Bhagavan is telling, there are no others in the self, then how can you become irresponsible? That is only the one abiding in the self is responsible. Because he or she alone is unconcerned about everyone, about himself or herself. And though there is no other, there is only pure love in such a person. So that person can never be irresponsible, can never be immoral, can never be hurtful. No wrong can happen. People may perceive what they do as right or wrong, but no wrong can ever happen by a person who is abiding in the self. And that is the state to which Bhagavan is guiding us very lovingly, as Nanda Kumarji said. And what further can we ask for? Because it is there, that grace is there. But that grace also reveals, that grace reveals the self. And it also cuts off many other granthis. Again, Nanda Kumarji would share with us off and on that many sadhanas can cut off many granthis, many places where we are stuck. So one of the very important areas which bind us, Bhagavan has started the Upadesha Saram, Upadesha Undiyar with that action. We are bound to the sense of doership. And in this verse, he has covered another very important aspect. Even our action, even our thoughts, all these are only praise which we are seeking for ourselves. We want to prove ourselves to be capable. We want to think that we are capable of analyzing things. We seek praise from ourselves primarily because we are the first other to ourselves. So Bhagavan says, you don't be an other to yourself. We first make ourselves into an object. We identify by identifying with an object. So that first other, to erase that, Bhagavan has given us this beautiful pathway back to the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.